Good morning, and thank you for pausing with me during your busy day. A couple of weeks ago, I spent a lot of time researching mountains in Israel, as you do. I wanted to find out if the mountain that Jesus climbed one day with Peter, James, and John was named. It wasn't. But during my research, I discovered just how many times biblical characters had found themselves on a mountain where they encountered God. Mountains are a regular topographical feature in Israel. Apparently, there are 1,001 named peaks. We remember how Noah's Ark came to rest on the top of Mount Ararat, and the first rainbow, a symbol of the covenant God made with his people, appeared in the sky. Abraham was tested to the limit, being asked by God to sacrifice his only son on Mount Moriah. Thankfully, God spoke to him and offered a ram in place of his son. Moses encountered God in that burning bush, and then again he received the 10 Commandments on Mount Horeb, or Sinai as it's also called. Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal, and God showed his mighty power on Mount Carmel. Now, even though I didn't alight on a name for the mountain which Jesus climbed with Peter, James, and John that day, it struck me how many times God had met with these biblical characters on a mountaintop that would be life-changing, not only for those individuals, but for all God's people. The incident I'd been researching was, of course, the Transfiguration, where Peter, James, and John first all witnessed Jesus' face and clothes shining white and bright as the sun, and then the appearance of Moses and Elijah with him, and then God enveloped them all in the cloud of his presence and spoke to Jesus' terrified disciples, "This is my son whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." Now, I'm sure you can imagine nobody would have come down that mountain that day without being profoundly affected. Jesus had been revealed to those disciples in his full glory. It truly was a mountaintop moment, a phrase which has come to mean a moment of transcendence or epiphany, and a particular experience of significant revelation given by God. Now, you would have thought that this mountaintop experience with Jesus would have been enough to sustain his disciples through the dark times that followed as they journeyed with Jesus on the road to the cross. But, of course, we know that the night of Jesus' arrest found his disciples scattering in fear, one of them even denying knowing him. How quickly we forget, how soon we find ourselves back in the valleys. Have you experienced a mountaintop moment with God? Now, I shared this story the other day as I was remembering a skiing holiday. We'd gone to the very top of the mountain range, planning to ski all the way down into the valley for lunch. When we got to the top, it was in cloud, it was snowing, the wind was howling, and as we skied along, the snow was coming at us horizontally, stinging our faces. We couldn't see anything, we couldn't hear any of the others in our group. All we could hear was this howling wind. It wasn't a great experience, but soon we came to the tree line, and as we stopped to regroup among the shelter of the trees, I noticed that now we had stopped, now we were still, now we were sheltered. Instead of blowing horizontally into our faces, the snow was falling softly down and around us. It was a perfect moment to experience silence, stillness, and the real beauty of our surroundings. And in that moment, I heard God speak to me saying, "You need to stop and be still to know my presence." It was literally an amazing mountaintop moment with God, and those words have stayed with me. However, I have to continually remind myself to stop and be still and know God's presence in this busy world. How easy is it to be caught up in the business of our lives and not to stop and look up and experience God's presence? As the writer of Psalm 121 tells us, "I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He promises to be with us always, but we need to be alert to his presence and how he is speaking to us in so many different ways, through words that come into our minds, through scripture, through other people, through pictures, through dreams, and countless other ways. Our God is a creative God and will do whatever it takes to get our attention. Now, you don't necessarily have to climb a mountain to encounter God, but when we seek him and seek him with our whole hearts, we will find him. And in those days when we find ourselves in the valleys, as we surely will, we need to recall those mountaintop moments to sustain us, and we can say in truth to him, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Let's seek God's presence and encourage one another wherever we find ourselves this week, on a mountaintop or in the deepest, darkest valley. Thank you for pausing with me. See you soon.